Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's training. My name is Laura Segre. I'm a former teacher, and I am the CEO and co-founder of NexGen News. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you. I'm so grateful that you've decided to try NexGen News, and so are your students. Before we jump into the training, I want to share with you how and why I started NexGen News. So the idea for NexGen News was born in a 5th grade classroom. When I was in 5th grade, way back when, current events education consisted of me cutting out a newspaper clipping, bringing it into school and presenting it in front of the class. 15 to 20 years later, I myself was a 5th grade teacher. And I had a really hard time finding news sources that were engaging and age appropriate for my students and for me to use with them. There were written news articles. Those were great for reading practice, but my students were really uninterested in them. There were adult video sources, but as my students said, adult news is boring. I thought to myself, students deserve their own news source. And if they're the next generation of learners and leaders, it's up to us to give that to them. And so that's why I decided to start NexGen News. We use video to engage students and provide a full curriculum for teachers to use. So without further ado, I'm going to show you how to use our platform today so you can get started with your students. Welcome, welcome. Before we jump into the training, I want to give you just a sneak peek at what's to come by showing you who we are. I'm going to play a more full screen version of the same video. And here we go.
News has never really been for kids, until now.
Today we're going to dig a little deeper into the Northern Lights, or Aurora Borealis.
Vaccines train the immune system to create antibodies to fight certain viruses.
So, NexGen viewers, how can you take action? What can you do in the fight against climate change? So, Oscar, you think you can name all 6 forces of the US military?
Today we're investigating homelessness in Los Angeles, but also across the country.
We open up this week with a troubling story that has been dominating headlines around the world about the Taliban regain control of Afghanistan after 20 years of American occupation. Hey NexGen News, Trente here in Pompeii, Italy. Nothing beats watching a movie in the theater.
I disagree. Streamers are greater than theaters.
What?
Nothing will stop this girl from reaching her dreams.
1, 2, 3, let's burpee.
Did someone say Bitcoin?
Now, as an adult, Joseph is trying to erase the stigma he faced growing up by writing a children's book, Black Boys Dance Too.
The year is 1787.
Democracy is the voice of the people. Denying votes is plain illegal. News for the next generation.
So I had to introduce our anchors, the face of NexGen News. These are our teen anchors. So a big part of why we are so successful at connecting to students is that we use students and they are role models. They look like them. They're like, I can be like that too. And it's easier to get through to students in that way. So thank you for watching that video with me. There's so much more where that came from for you on our website. But that's gonna play. Remember that from when I was teaching on Zoom. Let's dive into the training. So thank you for watching this video. Here's what I hope you get out of this. These are kind of like our goals, but As a former teacher, I'm going to call them learning objectives. So after watching this training, I will be able to navigate the NexGen News website, understand the different curricular components and when to use them. And lastly, you'll be able to create a class and add students to that class. So here's the order of which we'll be doing those things. First, I'm going to give you an overview of NexGen News. Then we're going to do a deep dive exploration of the website. We will then practice setting up a class. I will give you some tips for success, and then we'll wrap up. If your account has already been made, I encourage you to have your account open another window and do it along with us. This training is meant to be interactive, and I think you'll get the most out of it if you have your own browser window open, or if you prefer, you can watch this video through and try it on your own later, however is best for you. So I want to start with our overview. So here's what NexGen News is all about. So we're on a mission to inform, engage, and empower. So I'll start with the first one, inform. Like I mentioned earlier, students don't have a news source that's really for them, and they need to stay informed. So the first part is we want to keep the next generation informed about the world. And we do that through our bi-weekly video newscast that's presented by students their age. Next, engage. This is what I was talking about when I was with my students. I had written news articles, but those were not engaging for them. But also, I didn't have the tools as a teacher to really explore those things further. So when we talk about engaged, yes, we're talking about engaging our students through video, but also we're talking about engaging them further in the content. And so we provide educators the tools to have students think critically about current events using our curriculum. And lastly, empower. These students are the next generation, and it's our job to empower them and motivate them to be contributing members of society. So how do we kind of get that mission, right? So a lot of our work is based on Dr. Howard Gardner's 5 Minds for the Future. And in this book, he suggests that for the greater good of all of society, we need to develop these 5 minds in our students, right? And these kind of go beyond the traditional memorizing multiplication skills, right? And understanding vowel sounds. Those are all things that students need, but it needs to be more than that. So the 5 minds for the future are the disciplined mind, synthesizing mind, the creating mind, respectful mind, ethical mind. Now, I'm not saying that every single one of your students must develop all 5 of these. That's very rare, but we should strive to instill these minds in our students. And that's what our product tries to do. We have students synthesize information from a variety of contexts that are real world examples. We have students create. We are certainly tuned into being respectful by showing world cultures around the world and how to respect them. A lot of our stories touch on what's ethical, what's not. Students need those real examples. Okay, so that's kind of where we get our basis for our program. And so how do we develop these minds? How do we reach our goals? So this is how we do it. We have the newscast, which you saw kind of a little sneak peek of. We have our educator curriculum, and we have our at-home learning platform that's meant for families or students to just use once they're at home. So our newscast, this is the core of our product. Our bi-weekly videos newscast brings news to young people, presented by young people. The newscast is released every other Monday and is about 20 minutes long. Each newscast has 4 stories in it. And if you do the math, 20 divided by 4, they're about 5 minutes each, some longer, some shorter, it just depends. You can watch the entire newscast, but also all of the individual clips for each story are on our site as well. So you have multiple ways to view the newscast depending on what your goals are. The curriculum. So my co-founder and myself are both classroom teachers. She's still teaching. I have left the classroom to work on NexGen News full time, but this is what our background is in creating curriculum for our students and now for NexGen News. So every single story in the newscast comes with a ready-made Common Core aligned curriculum for grades 3 through 5. That's also differentiated for grades 6 through 8, which allows educators to teach those current events. And this curriculum can be used in person, but it can also be used for remote learning, okay? Either option is possible, and we'll jump in and look at the curriculum a little more later on. To give you a little more detail though, we have our curriculum. I like to call it our menu because there's so many options. It's like a menu to choose from. So really the main largest part of our product, the bulk of it, is our ready-made Common Core aligned lesson plans. And like I mentioned, these are differentiated for grades 3 through 5 and for grades 6 through 8. They are similar, but they have differences depending on the grade level in terms of the robustness. We have leveled news articles. So if you're like, you know what, I like these videos, but guess what? I still want to practice my reading with my students. We got you. We have leveled news articles to go with each news story. To go with those news articles, we have comprehension quizzes and writing prompts. The quizzes are automatically graded, assigned, graded out of 4, boom, done. The writing prompts do require you to evaluate your students, but we have a grading system on our website. Discussion questions. These are all about tapping into that ethical mind, right? Asking our students questions to prompt critical thinking. And finally, this is our creative mind, those independent activities. So we have student activities that students should do separately. It could be at home. It could be for those early finishers when, oh, I don't know what to do. You can go on NexGen News and work on one of those activities, but this allows students to really engage with those current events on a deeper level. So in addition to our curriculum, which is hosted on our learning management platform, here are some features of our website. So our learning management system allows you to add students to a class and assign work to them. When a student logs in, they can look at their assignments and get started. Our platform also allows you to track student progress. So I'm talking about those quizzes and those writing prompts, as well as what articles they've read. And it allows you to analyze student data on reading quizzes as well as writing prompts. And lastly, we have 2 integrations. So you can share assignments on Google Classroom if you're a Google Classroom person. I know I was when I was teaching. We also are integrated with Clever so students can access NexGen News through Clever, although you can't assign things on Clever. So our at-home learning platform. So NexGen News actually does have a family subscription that can be used by families at home. But for your students, because they already have NexGen News, their families don't have to purchase this. They can just use their accounts at home. So our at-home learning platform allows families to engage in the news together, but it could also be used as like I'll talk about this later, a fun work, which is my word for homework assignment. If you want to assign something for students to do at home, this is also just a family tool. So if you want to get families engaged in what you're learning in the classroom, NexGen News can bridge that gap for you. Our at-home learning offerings. Now with your subscription, your students will have everything because they'll have the teacher version. But if families are going to want to engage with their students, they're probably going to want to use just these 3 components. 1, the newscast. So that's a great way for kids and parents to watch news together so they can have a mutual understanding of what's going on in the world. We find that families love our discussion questions, maybe at the dinner table, maybe in the car, maybe before bed, whenever's a good time to have a conversation about the news. And then lastly, those independent activities I was talking about, those are great for being at home. Okay, so what is our promise to you? Like I mentioned earlier, I'm so grateful that you're taking the time to check out NexGen News and to watch this video. And so we promise to motivate your students. Our platform is used to springboard student engagement and voice through current events, newscasts, and resources. So we want to motivate your students. We want to engage them in the content and in their learning. Number 2, we will save you time. I used NexGen News in the classroom before I left teaching. I would just choose the story I want to do, watch the video, do the lesson, boom. Very minimal planning required, if any at all. Okay. So we want to offer you to take your time back while still offering a really rigorous curriculum and wonderful learning experiences for your students. Lastly, we can let you integrate. A lot of our curriculum is already integrating multiple subjects, lots of ELA and science integration, social studies and science. We have art that you can integrate. We have SEL. So we want to be able to fit into what you're doing in an engaging way. So that's our promise to you. Thank you for listening to that overview. If you are someone that's going to come on this website exploration with us in your own browser, now's the time to open up a new window. Give you a second. This is how we do it. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. All right, hopefully you have your window open so that I don't need to sing anymore. I'll save your ears. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. Okay, so our website exploration. First, I'm just going to show you how to log in, and then we're going to just kind of browse a little bit. So for all my friends doing this along with me, nexgennews.com. Here we are on our homepage. When you get there, you're going to click this log in button. You cannot access the content except our 4 free stories unless you log in. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And hopefully, if you're doing along with me, you just had the chance to log in. All right. So once you log in, it'll always take you to what we call your teacher dashboard. Okay. The dashboard will always have the latest newscast, and this will be the full newscast at the top. It will have the 4 latest stories. So these are the 4 stories that were in this newscast, but here they are separately. Below that, you will have access to our entire library of videos. And we add about 8 more a month since it's bi-weekly. So there's always more being added. As of it's March 2022, we have 132 news stories already on here. And like I said, we're adding 8 more every month. So we're just going to keep growing. At the top, you're going to see some topics. So it's Women's History Month. If you're interested in exploring some stories of important women from history, or actually just, teen women who have made a difference in their community that aren't famous, we have those stories for you. Science, technology, world news, but we have all our categories here. So if you're interested in searching for a specific category, perhaps I'm a PE teacher and I want to do a sports story, great. You can click there and that'll take you there. We can also search, we can view all of our stories, and there they are by topic. Let's say I'm a social studies teacher and I want to teach something related to social studies. Now that's not one of our news topics, but you can search news topics. So I'm going to search social studies and see what comes up. All right, so these are things that have been tagged as social studies. You can search really for a variety of things. Let's say I want to do an art lesson. So I'm going to search art. Let's see what comes up. Awesome. So these are all the lessons we have. Oh, and there's more. Haha. There's more art for you. So these are not necessarily stories about art, but maybe the lessons about art. So I encourage you to search and really look for what you want. But for this demonstration, I'm going to show you one particular, we're going to focus on one particular news story to go through the curriculum. One of my favorite stories we've done recently is called US Mint's Maya Angelou Quarter. So I'm gonna use that as our example. At the top here, we're gonna talk about this later once you've added the class, but you'll see you can assign to a class and you can share things on Google Classroom. For now, let's take a look at what we offer. So this is the story. I'm actually gonna open this in our demo page in a moment so that we can look at everything all at once. But every news story, this is the setup. There's the video at the top, and you can play it right there for your students. Students through their account can also just watch it on their own computers. If you don't want to project it and you want them to watch it by themselves, that's fine too. Below, you will see our discussion questions. You will see this is where you can access the lesson plans and resources, as well as there'll always be the objective here. So if you want to just check out what is this lesson about without having to download anything, just take a look at the learning objective. In this case, students will be able to determine the significance of Maya Angelou using multimedia resources to write a poem that expresses significant experiences in their own life. So already we can tell we're going to be learning more about Maya Angelou, and students are actually going to be writing a poem about their own life. If that's something that you would like your students to do, I suggest downloading it and learning more about that lesson and teaching it. Also on this page, we have the news article. We have a grades 3 to 5 article, grades 6 through 8. We have a reading quiz for each of those levels and a writing prompt, as well as an art student activity, technology, and writing. Like I said, instead of opening these all individually, I'm just going to show you what these look like if you were to download them. So this is just a demo that we use for teachers. Here are the assignment questions. Here are the activities. There's always writing, art, and technology. So here are some of the activities. These are meant for students to do by themselves. So for example, one is doing a quote analysis. One is designing their own US coin or bill. Another is to listen to Maya Angelou's inaugural poem that she did at Bill Clinton's inauguration. So those are some of the activities that students can do by themselves. For the lesson plan, you can either download the PDF, or if you're a big Google Drive person, which I am, you can download to Google Drive. If you teach grades 6 through 8, you should download one of those. Grades 3 to 5, one of these. Here's what, let's see if I can zoom out for you. There we go. Here's what the lesson plan looks like. Okay, we have the objective, we have the standards it aligns with. We connect a Common Core, NGSS, and National Core Art Standards. Because we work on a national basis, we do not write out the social studies standards we connect to because they vary by state, but we connect to a variety of social studies standards as well for your state. We have the materials that you'll need for the lesson, and they will be clickable here and linked. We'll look at the lesson slides in a moment. Those are so important. Let's keep going. Every lesson comes with vocabulary. After, this is kind of the pre-lesson materials, you jump into the lesson. The video is always the motivation for the lesson. That's what gets the students interested and engaged and piques them. Next, we always share the learning objective with students and go over the vocabulary words. After that is always the 3 Ps: presentation, practice, product. Presentation is for the teacher to really kind of present the learning skill at hand. And it's more teacher-centered. When you think about a direct instruction lesson, it's like kind of the demonstration aspect of it. Next is practice. This is where students get to practice the skill that you just learned, often in a group or as a whole group, partners. And then lastly is the product. What is the student actually making? We have a variety of products. In this case, they're writing a poem. Sometimes it'll be creating a presentation, writing an essay, making a piece of art, recording a video, making a speech. There are so many products that we use here at NexGen News, and you're always welcome to tweak the lessons however you see fit. After the product, we have possible extension activities. These are in addition to the activities that are on the main lesson page that students can do. These are usually share, technology challenge, sometimes also a writing activity. These are great for early finishers. We also have strategies for EL students and gifted learners. So these are here to help you for ELs and GATE students if you have that population in your class. Okay, moving forward, I'm gonna zoom back in. I told you about the lesson slides, right? So to go with that lesson I just went over, there are slides, and the slides are also different, 3 to 5 and 6 through 8. This guides the lesson. So you don't actually have to look at the lesson plan while you're teaching. You can just go through the slides. These can be used in person if you have some sort of screen or technology, but these are also great if you're teaching on Zoom or another video platform. When I was teaching on Zoom during the pandemic, I loved using NexGen News with my students, and I just used these slides and it was fantastic. So these are here to help you and come with every single lesson to guide your lesson. Okay, I will stop there. There are more slides to be had. I talked about the leveled articles. So here is an article example. I would say each article, depending, is anywhere between a 4 to 6 minute read. They're not too long, but they deepen the understanding and they're a great way to practice. And last but not least, are quizzes and writing prompts. So these are Common Core aligned quiz questions. They're multiple choice. There are 4 questions for each article. And then there is 1 writing prompt. Like I mentioned, the quiz questions will grade themselves out of 4. The writing prompt is also out of 4, but it's at the teacher's discretion to grade it. Okay, so that is an overview of what every single one of our stories had. So like I mentioned, right now we have about 132 of these news stories. So that means that you have 132 ready-made curricular experiences for your students at this time, with 8 more each month. Going back to my slides earlier, I talked about a menu, right? Our curriculum is a menu. You can pick and choose what you want. So I wanted to show you kind of a way to do that. I call this our make a meal. It's modeled after what I used to eat when I was in 5th grade. So maybe you ate some of these school lunch foods as well. But I also want to tell you about the time. So perhaps you just have 5 minutes with your students. Then I would suggest maybe you just watch the news clip that day. Have a chocolate milk, get it started. That's about 5 minutes, the video news clip. Let's say I want to watch the video news clip and I want to do those discussion questions. I'd say that's about 10 minutes or so of time. Reading the news article, that's about 10 minutes. Cheetos, those are my favorite. I'm sorry. I'm not a hot Cheetos person though. I'm a classic cheddar crunchy. All right, the quiz and the writing prompt. So let's say you want your students to read the article and then take the quiz and or the writing prompt. I'd say 10 to 20 minutes, depending on if you want them to also do the writing prompt. I don't know why I chose carrots for that. Maybe that's students' least favorite, I don't know, but it's important to get that data. So throw in those carrots, they need those. And my favorite food group, pepperoni pizza. So the big part of our curriculum is our lesson plans, and that's the major part of this meal, okay? Our lesson plans range anywhere from 50 minutes to 75, I would say. You can teach them all in one segment, but it's also great to break them up. I've had a lot of teachers, let me go back here, they'll start with the motivation, watching the video. They'll introduce the learning objective and the vocabulary, and then maybe they do the presentation all in one day. The next day, they'll have students do the practice and the product. And often these products are things that students can finish outside of class. So that's just a way to split them up over multiple days. You don't have to do it all at once. In fact, I recommend breaking it up if that fits with your schedule. And lastly, these rainbow sherbet cups. I don't know if I'm dating myself with these, but this was also a school lunch favorite when I was in 5th grade. These are the student activities, right? These are the dessert. These are the extra. You don't need it, but they're nice and you like them. Each of those activities, the writing, art, and technology, I'd say anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. They're shorter. Students can pick what they like. All right, that's our website exploration, our curricular exploration. I now want to show you how to set up a class, okay? Before we kind of look on the website, I'm going to go over the ways to do it. So you on your dashboard will be able to add a class or multiple classes. If you're a middle school teacher, you might want to add all the different periods as classes. If you teach the same thing across the board, perhaps you just have one large class. It's totally up to you. If you're an elementary teacher like I was, you likely will just have one class set up, but it's however many classes you have. There are 4 main ways to add students to your class, okay? The first way is just manually. You can add students by typing in their name and email. That'll send them an email, and then they can click on that, and it'll go to their account. Another way is to use a CSV file. I do not know what CSV stands for, but I'm gonna look it up after recording this video. But that's one of those spreadsheets, right? So you can upload, if you have a spreadsheet of your students' names and emails, you can upload it and that'll populate instead of having to do it manually. If you're a Google Classroom person, you can import your class from Google Classroom. If you use Google Classroom, I recommend that. Lastly, there's also a way to do it using a class code. So this is great for students can just make their own account and you just give them a code and they'll automatically be placed in your class, all right? So once students are in your class, you can assign work to them and track your progress. And then you can also share assignments on Google Classroom. Like I mentioned, students can also access NexGen News through Clever. I guess that's another way to add them. But you can't assign things through Clever. But you can also just have students go to nextgennews.com, log in, and then their assignments will be at the top. All right, let's take a look at this since I myself am a visual learner. I'm gonna go back to the home screen because this is what will happen when you log in. Make sure this is bigger for you guys. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go to this My Classes section. I am using an account that already has some students in a class, but you will likely have 100 user registrations left if your class is new. You might also need to click Add a Class. So I'm gonna just go and click on My Class since it's already been added. And I'm just gonna go through some of those ways to add students. Okay, so let's start with adding them manually. Let's say I want to enroll them manually. I'm just gonna click Enroll New Users. So this is the manual way. I can type in their name, Laura Segre, 5th grade student. And if you just want to add one, you can click submit and that'll send this email to the student to join your class. Let's say you want to add all 30 kids in your student, 30 students in your class at once. You can add as many as you want and then just click submit once they're all there and that'll send out all those emails independently. So that's one way to do it manually. Like I mentioned earlier, you can upload a CSV file or spreadsheet with your students' names and emails. You can download a sample to make sure that you have it in the correct format. Once you upload these, it'll essentially populate that manual and then you can submit those students. So that's another way to do it. Like I mentioned before, if you use Google Classroom and you already have your students on Google Classroom, I recommend using that. I do not have a Google Classroom account anymore because I am no longer a teacher. But here you'll be able to use your Google account and import your classes from there. The last way that I talked about was that class code. I'm going to show you that now. So here you see a button that says class codes. Here's some examples I've done in the past. but I'll do another one for you now. So you're going to click create a new class code. You can create your own. I recommend that so that students are familiar. Maybe it's your name, maybe it's your room number, whatever it is. But you can also do an auto-generated code, which will just be some random letters. I recommend doing your own though. So if we want a manual code, perhaps I say NexGen news rules. You can do spaces. I just was not, but whatever works for you. You can say when it's valid from. I'm going to say today. Now you know when I recorded this video. And I would just make it valid for a while unless there's any reason you don't want people joining later. Unfortunately, you do need to add an end date. So maybe I'm going to do the end of school. These are validation rules. This is if you only want students to enter with like a certain email address or IP address. I usually do not have this on. Just don't send out your code to non-students. Once you have your code set up, you're going to click submit. And on the bottom of our website, there's a join with a class code tab. If you send this to students, they can enter the class code to create an account and join your class. So that's another way to connect students to your class. Yeah, so I think that's adding students to your class. One more thing I want to show you with this class section is you can access data and reports. So if I click on reports, I guess these haven't started. Let me go to when they've done. So up here, you can do the lesson that you've assigned and you can see how students have done. So I know that we did some for this story actually. And you can see that student two has completed the lesson progress. Another way to look at data is through this advanced reports tab. So on your dashboard, if you go to advanced reports, you can see student data for the quiz, their name, the date, their score, and the time that it took. You can also download their data. So the one thing that you do have to do, let's say that you want to add it to your grade book, you do have to plug that in separately. All right, that's a little bit about setting up your class. And finally, I just want to end with some tips for success. Okay, so I hope you use these with your students. Okay, number one tip. We want you to lean on us when you don't have time. We know how busy teachers are, and we want you to save your time and take back your time and use our resource because there's really no planning required. So we hope that you lean on us. That's okay. We're here for you. Number two, we encourage you to give your students some NexGen News free time. So what I mean by that is perhaps, I don't know, 20 minutes a week, you give your students the chance to explore NexGen News independently. They can choose a story that stands out to them that they want to learn more about. They can watch the video by themselves. Maybe they do one of the activities by themselves. But we really encourage you to give them the chance to just explore what makes them curious so that they can, you know, really take charge of their learning and just continue to be curious. So they can go through the 132 lessons we have here, and the more we add, whatever strikes their fancy. Third, we encourage you to use NexGen News for early finishers, right? When I was teaching, there was students who were all over the map. And there were always students who finished fast, always some that I needed to work with. So for those students who are ahead, our program has so many resources for students to choose on their own and continue. Let's say they're interested in learning about Dia de los Muertos. They can independently watch the video, do one of the 3 activities, do one of the reading or the quiz. On students page, just so you know, there is not the teach. So they cannot do the lesson by themselves, but they will have access to engage, read and write, and the activities. You are the one that has access to teach. Number 4, we encourage you to assign at-home fun work. I know homework has become kind of a taboo word. Some people love it, some people hate it. So I like to think this is fun work. When you assign something for students to do at home on NexGen News, not only will they feel like they're having fun while learning, but the parents will also get involved, hopefully, and that'll lead to those at-home learning opportunities. So if you're like, you want something for students to do at home, but you're not sure, I encourage you to assign students something on NexGen News. And lastly, at the end of the year, when standardized testing happens, we encourage you to rely on us. When students are done with their testing, I know someone finished like an hour and a half each day before others, and it was hard to come up with what are they going to do? They should do NexGen News. And on top of that, save your planning time. When all students are done, do a NexGen News lesson. They're going to want something fun to do. They're not going to want to continue doing all those other super taxing rote things that they were doing with their testing. So we hope that you use us during standardized testing. I think your students will enjoy that after. And with that, let's wrap up. I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. Feel free to save it. Feel free to skip around whenever you need reminders. But I also want you to contact us at any time if you need help. Don't be shy. We are here to help you. We want to improve our product for teachers. So if you have questions, we will get back to you and answer them. If you have feedback, if there's a news story that you want to see, if you have an idea about content, please let us know. We want to improve the experience for you. At any time, you can email us at info@nexgennews.com. We also have a contact form on our website if that's easier. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for giving NexGen News a try with your students. We're here to revolutionize current events education, and we're so glad that you're a part of it. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.